Welcome to Good for Bitcoin, a weekly show recorded live every Friday, where we recap the top events of the week and talk about everything that is good for Bitcoin. If it's built on Bitcoin, then it's good for Bitcoin. Let's get started.
Content shared on this podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. It does not constitute financial, investment, or legal advice. The views and opinions expressed are those of the host and guests and do not reflect the official policy or position of any other agency, organization, or company. We encourage you to conduct your own research and consult with a qualified professional before making any financial decisions.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to Good for Bitcoin, weekly show we do here at Trust Machines. Happy Valentine's Day to those who celebrate. I'm Brandon, social media manager here at Trust Machines, joined by Sean Longstreet and Kate. Happy Friday, guys.
Happy Friday.
Happy Friday.
And yeah, we have a lot to get into. First, I do want to apologize for last week's show. Sean and I recorded it and we live streamed it, and we had no idea that the audio quality was absolutely terrible and basically unlistenable. So we didn't actually publish a show last week. So apologies for that. Maybe we'll have to recap some of the things that we talked about last week. But as always, there's so much to get into for this week. So let's just go right into it. Usually we kind of start the show talking about some things that we have been working on, maybe on the Trust Machine side or on the Leather side. But Sean, I actually wanted to throw it to you to talk a little bit about this really great post that you made this morning on kind of this, this era, maybe the start of a new era that we are finding ourselves in the Stacks ecosystem. Maybe you could talk about that a little bit. And I don't know if you want to share your screen or, you can just talk about it, whatever
Sure.
you prefer.
Yeah. Let me touch on the basics of it, but I think that could also be a good opportunity to transition to what you talked about in last week's show that was lost from the last episode, because you had a great rant and it was really good, somewhat related to this as well. So yeah, there's been a lot of, shifting tides in the Stacks landscape right now. I think everyone's kind of feeling, with the token price being down, it's hard for everyone to feel like good vibes. When the price is up, the vibes are good, right? And out of that kind of concern, everyone is pounding the pavement. There are Telegram groups that are happening, and a lot of the biggest leadership voices, the strongest voices on the community side, are now interfacing and connecting with a lot of the builders and the leaders on the Stacks Foundation side, amongst all the other apps that make up the Stack ecosystem. So this discussion is happening now. It should have been happening a long time ago, but it's finally happening. There's several narratives happening from several different sources, right? I know there's a strong push for DeFi in Stacks, but also you have a lot of really ardent community members who have been building around here for a long time, and they're saying community matters as well. So I wanted to recognize and honor a lot of the people who have been just contributing in any way, whether it's community or builders, marketers within the ecosystem, in the different apps within Stacks. Everyone is coming together and talking, and we're bringing to light, all the good things that are happening in Stacks. So there's a lot of things happening right now, lots of updates. So I just wanted to put this together in one blog post kind of on a Friday to sum up what's been happening over the last couple of weeks, because there have been a lot of very fruitful conversations. So yeah, it's a blog post called The Stacks Vibe Shift, a Pivotal Moment for the Bitcoin Layer. So it's basically talking about, what the DeFi focus is, what Andre is saying. Mitchell, there was a great call a couple days ago on the roadmap for Stacks, and out of that came, some more publications and clarity around, what the focus is, what the narratives are. And this is something that you and Brandon, you and Kate have been talking a lot about, talking as well about what's the narrative around sBTC, how are we going to handle this from a marketing perspective, and how are we going to communicate within the ecosystem. So yeah, it's a good little blog post that I felt needed to be written. And I also wanted to shout out a lot of the great people in the ecosystem.
Yeah, super important. And yeah, there's been a lot of really great, I feel like, content on kind of these topics being shared. I think it was yesterday that Jack Binswitch shared kind of his thoughts. I shared some thoughts last week on our lost episode. And we were also, Kate and I were on Mr. Wagme's show this morning talking about some of this stuff as well. And one thing that I actually thought of on the show that was interesting, and especially Sean, coming from your background with coming into stacks through City Coins, I remember hearing about City Coins when it was like, kind of the hot topic back in, what was it, like 2021 when that came around. I remember hearing about it. I remember thinking that it was interesting. And then I remember like going like, oh, maybe I'll like buy some, right? Because I heard that it was like some token that was like connected to Bitcoin somehow. And then learning that it was connected, like in order to buy some City Coins, I had to first sell my Bitcoin and buy STX. And I was like, I don't want to do that. And then I just didn't do it. And that was like my introduction to stacks. And I didn't, so that was my introduction, and I just wasn't interested in selling my Bitcoin, right? And we're at this extremely important moment now where we have sBTC live, where I can, I'm not selling my Bitcoin, right? I'm just moving my Bitcoin from one system into this more productive, faster, cheaper system. But I'm not like selling my Bitcoin in the same way that it felt like I was like selling my Bitcoin to buy stacks. And, maybe like we're not offering tax advice here or anything like that, or financial advice. But for me, that's just kind of a mindset. But I feel like that's a mindset that's shared by a lot of Bitcoiners in the space. And that's why you have historically seen a lot of reluctance for like the more traditional like Bitcoiners and like Bitcoin maxis and stuff to enter this kind of stacks ecosystem. Obviously the stacks token has a lot of, value and benefits, right? It's a governance token. It's how you kind of pay for gas fees. There's a lot of things that the stacks token does that it needs to be there. But for something like sBTC, it removes kind of that mental block of selling your Bitcoin to then enter into this other system where I can just bridge my Bitcoin in and then interact with everything that's part of it. So that's what I'm like really, really excited about with sBTC. I feel like people aren't talking about that aspect quite as much. Again, like you're saying, Sean, a lot of the focus really, historically has been on the tech and less on the actual applications and the actual things that you can do with the tech. I feel like we're entering this period where, that a lot of people are talking about like, hey, we need to stop focusing on the tech and start focusing on the use cases, which is really great because that's how you bring people in, right? You bring people in for cool shit that you want people to do. As I said in my my thread last week. So yeah, that's just something that, I've been thinking about a lot. And that's just what really, really excites me with stacks and where things are going is focus on sBTC. And what seems like this new focus on, at the end of the day, Bitcoiners want more Bitcoin. Like that's, we're trying to, save for the future, right? We think that it's a great store of value, preservation of wealth. We want to acquire more Bitcoin. And there's a lot of different things that we can do in the ecosystem to, try to reach that goal, right? We can dollar cost average, we can create and sell art, we can trade meme coins and then sell them for a profit, right? There's a lot of things that we can do. And all those circle back into stacks enables those things to happen. But at the end of the day, like people want more Bitcoin. So I think rallying around that as like a core theme of stacks, the network, is, something that will resonate, in my opinion, with most Bitcoiners out there. And, it's broad enough that, most apps can kind of form a narrative around that, whether it's like DeFi or Bitcoin lending or whatever it is, and run with it. And then we can focus more on the apps rather than focusing on the tech and the protocol itself. So that's, I guess, the combination of both Sean and I's thoughts on where Stacks maybe should be headed, or it kind of already is starting to head in that direction.
Brilliant. Yeah, I'm glad you got a chance to touch on at least part of your monologue from last week. I think the analogy I made was like, imagine like the most amazing, immaculate kitchen setup ever. Amazing cookery, knives, everything that you need. But like, if no one's in the kitchen, no one's making good meals. No one's eating well. So you got to have some cooks in the kitchen too.
Yeah, you need to have a chef in the kitchen, right? You can't just be like, I don't know, somebody off the street.
That's right.
The only thing I'll say about this is like, I feel like we are at this moment. There is so much momentum from the community. There's so much like passion and desire. And it's like Bitcoin DeFi is about to have its moment. The administration is like really pushing for this like golden age in America, made in America. And it's like Stacks is so well positioned for this. And I'm just like so excited to see how we can like bring sBTC to other people, show them just how powerful Stacks can be and like how closely coupled it is with Bitcoin. So there's so much exciting things to come from this ecosystem. It's crazy.
Yeah, I don't know how you could not be excited for the next like 6 months. Like, sBTC cap raise happens in less than 2 weeks. One thing that is really interesting, I can share my screen here, but I need to open up the tab first. Also, another thing that I learned from last week when Sean and I are doing the show is the constant screen sharing. I just can't, like, I can't do it. It's too many things to be keeping track of. So we can, since we're on video, we can share screen occasionally, but to do it constantly and then just keep track of everything that's going on, it's just like impossible. But enough talking. Let me share. So one thing that I've been paying a lot of attention to lately is Bitcoin layers, bitcoinlayers.org. Really cool resource for learning about just all the different layers that are on Bitcoin. A lot of people will talk about, there's a lot of different things. They'll call Bitcoin layers like L2s. They'll call us like side chains. There's a lot of different like terms that kind of get thrown around, especially just in the Stacks community, on like what is a Bitcoin layer, what constitutes a Bitcoin layer. And Bitcoin layers tries to actually define what is a Bitcoin layer and what is not a Bitcoin layer. And we talked about this a few weeks ago, I think, on the fact that they're actually kind of demoting a lot of Bitcoin layers that are not actual Bitcoin layers. If you look at, if you go to their page, you'll see just like 2 layers here. There's Lightning, which we're all very, familiar with, which is kind of more Bitcoin native. They have Mercury layer on here, which like is not launched yet. It doesn't have a supply here. And then there's this tab for side systems. And what's interesting is, you see a lot of different layers here that have this little eye next to them. And you're also seeing a lot of red on a lot of these layers that have an eye next to them. And when you mouse over the eye, it's basically saying like, hey, we're actually redefining what a side system is. And the following project claims to be a Bitcoin layer, but currently does not meet our technical standards to be considered a Bitcoin side system. So when you sort of take away all of these quote unquote Bitcoin layers that are not actually kind of anchored to Bitcoin in the same way that something like Stacks is, Stacks would be sort of number 3 based on the Bitcoin supply that is bridged into the system. We have, Liquid, which is kind of, I think, perhaps the longest of the 3 that's been around for a very long time, has, 3,700 or so Bitcoin bridged in. Rootstock, a little bit, behind that with 3,100 Bitcoin bridged into the system. And then you have Stacks here that's at, 1,200. And, that cap, that's with our cap imposed on it, right? Liquid and Rootstock don't have a 1,000 BTC sBTC cap, set, right? These are systems that have been around for years, and that's what their supply currently is set to. Meanwhile, you have Stacks, which is about to add 2,000 additional Bitcoin to this, And then, obviously there's going to be even more, after that. But this next cap that happens in 2 weeks is going to be an additional 2,000 Bitcoin. If we hit that cap, we'll flip rootstock and we'll be around 500 Bitcoin away from flipping liquid, which sounds very achievable to me whenever the next cap, opens up. So, what in just the matter of like a couple of weeks, Stacks is going to be, based on kind of this order of how Bitcoin layers, orders things, maybe like number 3 in terms of like the best, Bitcoin layers in terms of the supply that's kind of bridged into the system. And it has the potential to be, even more than that once the cap gets lifted again, right? And to potentially even be more than Lightning, right? Like they list Lightning as only around like 5,000 or so Bitcoin. It's not that much of a bigger leap, compared to like, what is it, 3,700. I just think there's a lot of things that are kind of being set up on Stacks to be a really big year. And that's what I'm pretty excited by. But I think, for this kind of sBTC cap, that's really what I'm going to be paying attention to a lot, is how it kind of relates to a lot of the other Bitcoin layers that are out there. And we'll probably flip rootstock pretty soon is my personal prediction.
That's a good framing. I think it's helpful to bear in mind that despite like all the crazy bullish, sentiments out there, maybe we should not treat this as a foregone conclusion, and everyone should keep in mind, like, what are the actionable things? I do have in the blog post, like, what you can do, how you can contribute, on this. When it comes to sBTC, can you get educated? Can you advocate about it? So I think if we're turning the corner, but stop. Got to keep spreading the good word.
Yeah, I think that's a little bit more of what my rant was last week on. There's a lot of like complaining about certain things, and there's not a lot of like actionable feedback or actual doing about certain things. And I feel like we're starting to get there as a community on like, okay, like there's a lot of noise right now, a lot of noise on what we should be doing, but not a lot of action. And I feel like we're kind of slowly but surely kind of getting there, which is exciting. But yeah, you're totally right, Sean. Like there's definitely a lot of work to do. But I think it's, on our side, the kind of responsibility is to give the community the tools, like empower them to, to spread these kind of core, really important messages and goals out there, and give them the talking points and give them the resources to help with this really important cause. So that's also something that's been on my mind quite a bit as we get ready for, this cap in the next less than 2 weeks.
Yeah. Well, if there's no more we want to talk about with the cap, maybe, Kate, I was going to throw it to you if you want to talk about some of the building that's happening on Stacks and the Leather Lounge that we had on Tuesday with Rosar.
Yeah, Rosar was super fun. He is like a beast of a builder. And once you get him going, he loves it. You can tell like he's just so passionate about it. And one thing that I really was interested, he was talking about building more like on-off fiat ramps to Stacks, which I thought was so useful. I know he mentioned that like right now, I think there are other ways, but I think Coinbase is like the main way that you can acquire Stacks at the moment. And I just think, building like an easier way to acquire Stacks, enter the ecosystem, was a solid point. He's like big brain on using Stacks as like a payment network. So maybe you can recap that one, Sean. I don't know if you had some like good takeaways. Overall, like I think his message of just like build cool stuff, people will come and use it. We need more developers, more builders. And I know that he's working on, building some easier frameworks to get people in and kind of like understanding how to use Clarity, how to actually engage with Stacks. So I thought that was really cool of him.
Yeah. So, we have Nakamoto here, fast blocks, but for some people, it's not fast enough. And Rosar is thinking, if we want this to be no latency, if we want GameFi with Bitcoin finality, it needs to be instant. And right now that's not possible. So he has built this framework around side channels on Stacks that allow you to batch signatures. Like he's doing 200 per block right now. blocks can be as long as like 30 seconds. So, that's super fast, but it's not Solana speeds, right? So he's building out this method of, it's kind of becoming centralized with these side chains, which is going to be like fine for a lot of use cases. So yeah, he's talking about what he's building. Like you mentioned, he wants to build like a centralized exchange, like a Coinbase for fiat on and off ramping. But one of my favorite discussions was about like all of the experimentation that he's done and all the failures. And I said, those who succeed fail multiple times, and those who don't succeed fail once. And he just started laughing and he said, I failed so many times.
Yeah, shout out to Rosar. I forget what it was. I was talking, I think, to you about this, Kate, the other day about what that conversation with Rosar reminded me of, which was it like, it was before Nakamoto. There was like it was almost like a side chain, or like it was like a layer 3 kind of system on stacks that was being built that was kind of trying to do some similar things. I don't know. I'm like blanking on what it was.
Yeah, there's a term for it.
Yeah, it was announced.
I forget the term as well.
And then like it just kind of seemed like nobody did anything with it.
Was it like sub blocks or something?
Yeah, something like that.
Micro blocks?
No.
It's in that domain.
But anyway, it's basically like a layer 3, stacks layer 3, right? It's a kind of what it is. Yeah, I mean, again, shout out to Rosar. He's just doing some crazy technical things that are like way over my head. Yeah, shout out to him.
Definitely. Yeah, talk about a great community member who's just always coming back and driving and supporting people and leading and, walking the talk.
Yeah, absolutely. Kate, I wanted to throw it back over to you to talk about the little Valentine's Day campaign that mostly you launched and worked on. I'm going to share our Trust Machines Love Letters to Bitcoin blog post. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
So yeah, it's always fun to do little things like this. Some people love them, some people don't, but I think they're always, they're fun to like connect with people. And so we had this idea to ask, people that we're closest with here, sort of like the moment that they knew Bitcoin was, the one for them. A lot of us have done a lot of experimentation in crypto, gone to other chains, and most of us have all come back here because of some solid reasons. So I reached out to internally at Trust Machines, Brandon, Rena, Jason, they all gave me sort of like their stories, but then I also reached out to our community ambassadors at Leather, and they gave us a little spiel as well. So we put it together in a blog post. I think it's just a really great way for, to share with other people, maybe share it with like a family or a friend member who's like kind of on the edge or is like kind of curious about Bitcoin. I think this would be like a really great thing for them to read because all of our stories are so different, but they all kind of come back to the same pattern and we all end up at Bitcoin. So we put together this and then we did some really fun Valentine's Day cards that we've been sharing on Trust Machines. They're very like Bitcoin punny. So I don't know if you're going to share them on here, Brandon, but we had a laugh creating these. But they're really just about, sending them to someone in your life who is into Bitcoin as well. I'm sure that they would really appreciate getting one of these cards. So, are you a seed phrase? Because I'll never forget you. Our love is like Bitcoin, volatile but always going up. You must be a rare sat because you're one in a million. This one's hard to read, but you must be an ordinal because you're inscribed in my heart forever. And then I think the last one we shared was, are you Satoshi? Because I've been searching for you my whole life. Who knew Bitcoin was so relatable to Valentine's Day?
Yeah, so
people
fun.
Are passionate.
Yeah, such a fun campaign. Yeah, I think we got inspiration from like all those like old Valentine's Day cards that you would get in like elementary school. It's kind of a weird concept that you would just like give a bunch of Valentines to like all your classmates in elementary school. I don't know. Maybe is that just like a US thing?
No. We did that as well. Yeah, it was a whole thing.
Yeah, but yeah, a little nostalgic, a little fun.
Yeah.
Which we always appreciate a little nostalgia around here.
And then on Leather, we shared just like little snippets from our ambassador stories. So thank you to all of our ambassadors who participated in this. This was really a really fun one. And I really appreciate you taking the time to sort of share a little bit about your story. So go ahead and check those out.
Yeah, shout out to Toonie, to 300, GPSC, Reese, and yeah, we shared some more. So yeah, super fun.
Just love bringing like a human element wherever we can to Bitcoin and making it a little bit more palatable.
Cool. Well, let's get into the news. It was maybe a slightly slower news week. I felt like this week. A lot of folks traveling. It's like NFT Paris is going on this week. I know we're like kind of gearing up for like this new kind of conference season is kind of starting over the next few weeks. I know there's going to be a lot of travel going around, but let's get into it. We always like to start with the public companies that have been making some moves. So Strategy, formerly known as MicroStrategy, of course, has acquired more Bitcoin. They acquired 7,633 BTC, $42 million. Public company Cooler, KULR, we've mentioned them on the show before, buys an additional $10 million worth of Bitcoin. They're now holding over 610 BTC. And we haven't talked about them on the show, I don't think. I don't actually know why we haven't, because they've been doing this for a while. But Metaplanet, they are a public company in Japan. Many of them call them the MicroStrategy of Japan, or I guess the strategy of Japan now. They completed a $4 billion yen raise to purchase Bitcoin, which is about $26 million US dollars. And then just like MicroStrategy, they have had just this really big, huge run up in public markets, and they're up over 4,800% in the past 12 months, which is quite a rise. And yeah, we'll mention the sBTC cap again, which is set to be raised to 3,000 on the 25th. So countdown is on. I feel like we're going to have to schedule like a special space or something like that to kind of commemorate that time, because I think there's like a set date and time that it's happening. With withdrawals also coming in March, which is also very exciting. So lots of stuff to look forward to over the next month or so. I'm going to share my screen again here. Bear with me. We gave them a shout out last week and I shared my screen, but I'm going to do it again because this is a really cool resource, which is Bitcoin Laws, bitcoinlaws.io, checking in on all the SBR bills. And I think, well, it says right here, there are 24 states which have some type of SBR Bitcoin reserve bill in strategic Bitcoin reserve bill in, talks or consideration. So we are nearly majority of states considering Bitcoin, which is pretty crazy to say and think about. But really cool resource here on bitcoinlaws.io. And we could look at each state, each bill, and what kind of stage it's in, whether it's like failed, or most of these are not failed, but a couple of them are. And we can see kind of what, how each state is progressing. We can see that Utah currently is kind of the farthest ahead, narrowly behind Arizona and Oklahoma in their bills that have been proposed. And then some others are kind of in their first or second stages, but really cool resource. You can go in here and you can find more information on like details on each bill. You can view the full text. Really cool resource. So wanted to make sure that I shouted that out since we lost the audio from last week's.
Curious to bounce over to Polymarket and see what the odds are of, which state will pass the Bitcoin Strategic Reserve Act first.
I actually haven't been paying too much attention to Polymarket lately.
So there's a 2% chance on Polymarket that the Texas Strategic Bitcoin Reserve Act will be signed into law by March 31st. Odds are low on that one.
Is there anything for Utah? I'm putting you on the spot to
let's see.
To find.
No, just a little NFA that there's a 75% chance of Bitcoin hitting an all-time high by June 30th, but we're not so far away from that, so that doesn't seem unreasonable.
Interesting. Cool. Well, we'll keep updated there. Wanted to specifically shout out North Carolina, who entered the SBR race. HB 92 would allow North Carolina to invest 10% of state funds into exchange-traded products of digital assets that are above a $750 billion market cap. And I think if you're looking at, that's like, that's broad, but also fairly narrow in terms of like what assets actually fit that. Like ETFs, basically, that's just Bitcoin right now. So that basically is a Bitcoin bill. Also, Florida has introduced a second SBR, HB 487, which similarly would allow 10% of public funds invested into Bitcoin. Florida, Missouri, and Ohio all have SBR bills in both chambers of Congress. Both, we'll see maybe some bipartisan support in those three states. So maybe we'll see those three in particular, Florida, Missouri, and Ohio, maybe progress a little bit faster than some of the other ones are, which is pretty cool.
I'm wondering if you guys have seen much talk or had an opinion on, with like a lot of states and nations adopting their Bitcoin reserves, sort of having it follow the same trajectory as gold, where it kind of gets centralized towards, government gets locked away. It's kind of becomes like unusable. So yeah, I'm wondering if you've had any thoughts about this. Like, I know it's like very exciting. It's like Bitcoin adoption and it's getting a lot of attention, but at the end of the day, is this like of the ethos, Bitcoin is for the people? And does this kind of like take away from it? I'm not sure if you've really thought about this deeply or not. I'm kind of just starting to think about this as we see all of these bills.
Yeah, I haven't personally taken like a stance on it. I know there's a lot of people also talking about like, the benefits of kind of states leading the charge here versus like federal, like having an actual federal SBR, bill from like Trump, right? And having it being more top down versus kind of the states kind of competing for it. And I guess like historically in the US, there used to be this thing where like states kind of had their own kind of banking systems and they were able to kind of like just do things on like a state level. And now we have kind of this federal banking system and there's kind of some comparisons being made there. But yeah, I haven't personally, we should look into like doing maybe like a leather lounge with somebody that's like a little bit more on like the policy side that, maybe can speak to this a little bit more. But yeah, I haven't personally like formed a decision, I guess, around if it's good or bad or whatever. But I think it's just kind of inevitable though. I mean, it's just inevitable that like as Bitcoin continues to take over, finance, nobody had like these institutions and states and governments and stuff, just like they don't have a choice anymore. They need to like get on board or they're just going to be left behind. But Sean, I don't know if you have any strong opinions one way or the other on that.
Yeah, I think Bitcoin is valuable for so many different reasons, right? And I think right now the biggest narrative is as a hedge against inflation, and which is why it makes sense to hold it for that. But to your point, Kate, about like what it means to hold it as an individual, it was originally peer-to-peer cash, right? So you have sovereignty because of that. So I think there's so many different use cases for it. And
I mean, at the end of the day, you can't do anything about it. If people want to buy it, they're going to buy it. If states want to buy it, they're going to buy it. And that's the whole point.
It's the beauty of permissionless systems, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I guess maybe on that note, this actually news came out this morning that Abu Dhabi's sovereign wealth fund has purchased $436 million worth of Bitcoin ETFs in Q1. And that's quite a lot. I think, does that technically qualify as a government holding a new government holding Bitcoin? I think probably. It's an ETF. It's not native Bitcoin, but I don't know. What do you guys think about how big of a deal is this? It seems like the prices went up a little bit, kind of based on the news that happened this morning.
I would consider that, yeah, for sure, a government to be holding this.
Yeah, so big deal. I think the news broke this morning, so I'm not sure how much more information we'll get from it, but pretty cool. And then I think Kate, you added a couple additional things on here, which I'll maybe throw it over to you to queue up.
For sure. Yeah, I just thought with, there's a lot of talk about like events and conferences that are happening, and I always just think it's good to kind of give some reminders about OPSEC. And this was also kind of inspired because I saw another article today or yesterday about another kidnapping. So in the last like 6 months, there's probably been like 3 notable ones. There was the CEO of WonderFi, who's like a big exchange in Toronto. They were kidnapped downtown, just walking down the street. I think they were released for a $1 million ransom. And then there was the Ledger CEO, which just recently happened, where him and his partner were abducted from their home. And they also demanded like a very substantial ransom. And then the recent one I saw was a family in Chicago. And I think they were kidnapped by 6 people, held at gunpoint, pretty scary stuff. I think they were demanding up to 15 million. So it's not to scare, but it's also just like really good reminders. So I thought it might be good to kind of go over a few tips, both like digitally when you're engaging online, but also personally. And I'm sure there's more to add here, but I just thought it might be good to go over them. So some that came to mind for me digitally was obviously get your Bitcoin off exchanges, hold them in a hardware wallet, enable multi-factor authentication. So don't use SMS, use an authentication app if you can. Avoid public Wi-Fi. Don't click those weird links. I know we hear phishing all the time, but like that is such a huge one. And just test your transactions first. So send small amounts before sending like a large amount. That one's less about like kidnapping, but just a good reminder. And then these ones I think relate more to when you're out in public and, you know, a lot of us, like we're putting our faces online, we're sharing, obviously that we're in this industry, that we value it. So like there is a risk there. So I think for personal privacy, I would suggest to those who are online to like not overshare too much. So, you know, don't be sharing your big purchases. A lot of us, yes, we're traveling to conferences, but maybe avoid like posting live where you are in the moment and kind of like delay your post so people don't know where you are at every exact moment. One that I've heard shared often is kind of keep quiet about your holdings. So even among your family and friends, you know, don't be sharing like how much you have and where it is, kind of, you know, keep that personal and private. I would disable your location tracking. And then just in your home, make sure you're keeping your devices in like a safe place. Use a safe if you can, alarm system if you can, maybe some cameras. But yeah, those are just ones that come to mind. I know that there's like a lot more. And I know we've talked about it before about kind of like doing maybe an episode on this, maybe some best practices. And I think that would be good. But yeah, if you guys have any more to share, I think that would be super useful.
Yeah, super relevant, especially like you said with I was going to say concert season. It's not concert season.
Same thing.
With it can be sometimes, but conference season coming up. Like, I don't know, I've seen in the past like people wearing like ledgers around their necks walking around at conferences. Like, that's not smart. Don't do that. Like, people, especially at like these conferences, like Bitcoin conference especially, people really like to, you know, especially during like these bull markets, right? People like to kind of flaunt their wealth a little bit, which is never really a very smart thing. One thing that I personally kind of made the switch to, another thing that's just like a general rule is you don't want to have like security through obscurity. And basically what that means is like you should be able to talk about kind of how you secure your Bitcoin without threatening like the security of your Bitcoin, right? Like I personally was using a like a cold card for a while to like as like a cold storage kind of for my Bitcoin, which was like fine, but that's still just kind of like it's just one private key, right? That's holding it. So I actually recently just got a BitKey and I've been playing around with that, which is a multi-sig, you know, on the kind of Stacks leather side, you know, we have things like a Signa, which are multi-sig. I think multi-sig is still something that's like very underutilized by a lot of people, but is incredibly secure and resilient also, right? Like if you lose a private key and you have just a single sig, right, you've lost everything that was in that wallet if you lose that private key. Where if you have something like a multi-sig, you can lose a private key as long as you don't lose a second one, you know, and you keep things in multiple places and, you know, make things secure. So, you know, if you're not doing anything with multi-sig, that would be my advice, is to look into multi-sig options. You know, BitKey is one, Rider is another, a Signa on the kind of software side. There's a lot of options there that are Casa is another one. So yeah, that would be my recommendation, is to make it difficult for somebody to steal your Bitcoin, right? If you get hacked and you reveal a private key and you're using multi-sig, even if that one private key were to get compromised, it's multi-sig, so you wouldn't lose anything potentially, right? If it's just one key that got compromised. So there's a lot of benefits to multi-sig. So that would be one of my biggest recommendations is to look into that because there's a lot of benefits there.
Yeah, there were only two things that I would add on to that. And like you mentioned, Casa. So any collaborative custody solution can do this. And you can also like time bound. You can put time bound limits where you can't send over a certain amount in a certain, like a period of time, right? If you want to move anything significant, there's like a 3-day wait period for it, right? But then also don't have most of your holdings on like a hot wallet, right? Or even having like a second hardware wallet where you just have a little bit of bounce. And if you're in a wrench attack situation, you can look like you're complying, but you're not going to be losing all your Bitcoin, right?
Yeah, people in this industry get like really comfortable with just like having a bunch of like really high value ordinals and stuff in their wallets. And those things need to be like secured. Like I've been at ordinals events where like people were like screen sharing because they were like trying to show something off, and they like opened up one of their Bitcoin wallets, and there was like I think like over 20 grand in it, and I was just like, you wouldn't carry $20,000 a regular wallet while you're walking around town. Like that's how you want to think about it, right? Like it was pretty crazy to me. Like I think people like some of these ordinals and some of these like Stacks NFTs, like they're expensive, and like it doesn't matter how much maybe your overall net worth is. You don't want to lose 20 grand. Nobody wants to do that. So just, maybe like take a look. Maybe this is like the advice is to just kind of take a look at whatever your setup is, audit it a little bit, and see kind of where you might be able to secure it a little bit better. But don't keep all your eggs in one basket. That's super important. And look into hardware wallets and multi-sig.
Yeah. I have notifications on for Jameson Lopp, and he's a sobering reminder of how much this is happening. Like his pinned tweet is about the 6 men who were accused of kidnapping 3 family members and a nanny in Chicago. 2 hours ago, he said that there were 20,000 kidnappings in South Africa last year. Like, this is a real problem. So obviously, he has a solution to this, so he's posting about it all the time. But it is, as the price goes up, this is only going to happen more frequently.
Yeah, I actually pulled up this tab here. Jameson, just a wonderful resource for security in general, both on the OPSEC side and then just more specifically for Bitcoin. But he maintains this list of physical Bitcoin attacks, and it's pretty crazy how many there are. And he keeps us updated, and it's sorted by time here, so we can see, just maybe. Well, I guess maybe he needs to update it because there's been a couple more that have happened in the past couple of weeks, which is crazy. But yeah, there's it's kind of good to kind of go through here and see some examples of different things that have happened to people, to see kind of what are kind of some of the common attack vectors. You want to make it impossible for somebody to steal your Bitcoin, right? That's like the goal, is you want to make it so not even if somebody came up to you and tried to attack you in some way to steal your Bitcoin, make it impossible for your Bitcoin to be stolen. And there are ways to do that. Like Sean mentioned, you can set time locks and certain things. So there's a lot of resources out there to do that. So yeah, thanks, Kate. Good reminder for Bitcoin security.
I don't know. I think Sean, this was yours that you wanted to chat about. I think this is pretty fun to get into.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys remember, but a few years ago, this was all over the news. This guy, his girlfriend or partner, threw away a laptop that he claims had 8,000 Bitcoins on it, and which is now worth 620 million pounds. And so he's been tirelessly looking for it in the landfill. This is in Wales, and the landfill is going to be closing in 2025 and 26. I mean, he's, time is basically up for him. So he tried to sue the city council. He didn't really have the right to, so that was dismissed. But the landfill, it's going to be, capped and possibly turned into solar energy, and then using the waste to make energy as well. But wouldn't it be so poetic if it was also, using Bitcoin mining from the off-gassing? So
Some of the emissions from his laptop are then used to mine new Bitcoin.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm sure he would love that too.
Yeah.
Wouldn't this
Yeah.
be solved with multisig?
There you go. Also, who throws away a laptop? There's nobody talking about that aspect. Isn't enough.
There's the biggest question. He's actually just a landfill junkie enthusiast. He loves digging through the trash.
Yeah.
A woman
So-
who wants an organized house will throw away anything.
Get this laptop out of here. Taking up
there's
space.
more to this story.
Yeah. Yeah, 8,000 Bitcoin. That's a lot of Bitcoin. Yeah, I would be kicking myself every day if I was in that situation.
And digging through the trash.
That's crazy. I guess so. Yeah, that's crazy stuff. Cool. Well, we're right about at the hour. I think that's everything that we had for the week. Kate, do you want to give a little preview of some of the traveling that you'll be doing soon?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to be at ETH Denver, repping leather, trust machines, and stacks. We have some fun events. I'm really excited for the SheFi Summit one. That's going to be a big one that Leather is sponsoring. And Rena's going to be speaking at that as well, our COO. And then on the stack side, we have the Buildle Battle event. And I think there's like an app rate Bitcoin. But yeah, we'll be sharing lots of those events. And then if you are going to be in attendance, reach out to us, DM me on any handle, really. Because it'd be great to meet some of you guys in person. That would be super fun. So lots to be excited about in ETH Denver for sure.
Yeah, ETH Denver, super fun last year. Not going this year, but I know you're gonna have a great time, Kate. So yeah, it's gonna be super fun. Well, I think that about does it for us. A knock on wood that there was no technical issues with anybody listening. Sound is good on my end, so apologies again for last week. We will get the show up today on anywhere that you get your podcasts, and yeah, we will see you guys next week. Thanks so much for tuning in.
Bye, guys.
Thank you for listening. We record Good for Bitcoin live every Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time on X. Please follow us at Trust Machines Co. if you would like to listen and engage with us live. Visit us at trustmachines.co for all the latest Bitcoin news. We'll see you next week.